So I'm Andy Orem. I'm with Bradley Kuhn. We're going to talk about free software and where it's going.
Thanks, Andy, for having me over.
Yeah. So, Bradley, what are some of the organizations now in the free software space? There is so much happening there.
It's become quite a crowded environment in open source and free software. Historically, the nonprofit charity organizations, most famously the Free Software Foundation, where I used to work, started in the 1980s developing free software as a charitable activity. Of course, the success of open source, which has been a somewhat limited but useful success, has led to lots of for-profit companies having an interest in the free software that we used to purely develop as a community activity. And there are still many charities doing the work. I work for a charity called the Software Freedom Conservancy, which is a nonprofit charity home for free software projects. We also have the rise of the trade association, which are company-controlled organizations, such as the Linux Foundation, where companies put together their resources to influence and, in some places, control where free software and open source projects are going. So we have a complex environment.
In fact, Sam Ramsey just gave a keynote where he said that the economic, because free software, open source now, is economically successful, that leads to competition and distrust, and therefore we need the foundations. That was his argument.
You know, Sam Ramsey always amazes me with his ability to co-opt other people's messages. I was quite impressed by his talk as a political maneuver. And the political maneuver I'm talking about is that he's talking about trade associations. He's talking about for-profit companies putting their resources together to influence the industry. I focus on the individual users and developers of free software and what's happening to them. Charities have to act in the public good, and that's why I work for a charity. I don't agree with Sam that open source has won and that movement is over. I think what happened was the free software movement was overshadowed by this business interest in it called open source. And we're in an ironic moment, because there is more and more free software being written every day. Even organizations like Sam's, the Cloud Foundry Foundation, is releasing free software. And that, in isolation, is a wonderful activity. The problem is the more and more free software we get, the more and more proprietary software is being built around it to use it. So I spend my day looking at the fact that I wake up in the morning, there's more free software in the world today than there was when I went to bed, but I'm more likely to encounter a situation where I'm trying to get a job done or do something in the world where proprietary software is necessary. And that's really disturbing.
Well, we have seen some problems that can arise when someone says, we have Linux, we have this, we have like 99% free software, but there's one driver in there that's proprietary. So tell us some of the risks when you have the proprietary stuff in there.
So there's proprietary stuff all over the stack, and that's really got us concerned. Certainly, when you look at something like the Android environment, not all, but the overwhelming majority of the applications are proprietary software. The Android stack is under a non-copyleft license. What that means is when you get a copy of Android from your vendor, you probably didn't get it as free software. You got a proprietarized version with their proprietary improvements on it. And down deeper in the stack, the problem you were mentioning, Linux, which is under the GNU General Public License, not the strongest, but one of the best copyleft licenses available, many people ignore that license and put, as you say, a proprietary driver inside Linux. One of the things that my organization works on is defending the GPL for Linux and ensuring that we eventually get all those drivers released, because to put a proprietary driver with Linux is a violation of the GPL.
I think there's been a lot of debate over that, but I think what our audience needs to hear is what are the risks? What will happen now, that it might be collecting data on you or something you don't understand? Indeed,
all the risks that we in the free software world have talked about regarding proprietary software still exist today. Software that you can examine that is not under your control can be doing anything and you don't know what it's doing. And further you go down the stack, the more control that software has over what the computer is doing, what data it's sending somewhere, and you just don't know without being examined the source code. Free software assures that you can examine the source, not just examine the source code, but also rebuild it from scratch and reinstall it, so that if they gave you binaries that didn't match the source code, that sneakily did something nasty, you can get rid of all of it and recompile it from scratch, and that's something users absolutely need.
Here at OSCON in the past, Karen Sandler has talked about her experience with an embedded heart device and how she cannot get the data from it and she can't find out what bugs are on it, and this is the kind of thing we're facing.
That is indeed true. Karen Sandler is now the executive director of the organization I work for, the Software Freedom Conservancy, and we're working together on a lot of these issues, including the issue of implanted medical devices that again, run proprietary software. This is what I mean when I say that there are more and more proprietary software in the world all the time, even though there's more free software too. We've got to get proprietary software out of everything. It's probably a multi-generational battle, but to say that we've already won is just co-opting the message of what we've been talking about for 30 years.
Now, we know that Richard Stallman's asked people to take the pledge to use only free software on everything. Are we further away from getting that, or are we closer?
I think that we get further and closer all the time. Both things are happening at once because the technology moves very fast, that's a given, and we often are trying to catch up. The GNU project, which Richard Stallman started, spent years and years trying to catch up just to Unix. That part has more or less been successful, but the technology industry moved on. And the worst part about it is because of the advent of preference by these companies for non-copylefted licenses, that key tool that we had to make sure they couldn't take our work and just build more proprietary stuff on top of it, i.e. the copyleft, is used in fewer and fewer places because companies refuse to allow their developers to choose copyleft.
Well, did you have anything else you wanted to tell people before we wrap up?
I would like to encourage people to understand that while there's a lot of money flying around the world in technology, both for for-profit companies and for the trade associations they fund, charities are an important part of our ecosystem, and I encourage people to donate to your favorite charity. Look and make sure it's a certified 501c3 charity, and if they're excited about what Software Freedom Conservancy is doing, they can go to sfconservancy.org/supporter and become a supporter of the Software Freedom Conservancy.
Thanks a lot for coming in.
Thank you for having me here, Andy. It was a lot of fun to talk to you.